There's a revolution happening in Iran, and they're asking for simple things: democracy and human rights. There's a massacre happening in Iran by the regime against its own people. And this issue will have butterfly effects all over the world. How do I know that they don't want you to know about this? They spend billions of dollars trying to spread propaganda abroad. They lobby in your institutions to affect how decisions are made in your countries, in Europe, in the US. They want to mislead you and confuse you and create a sort of fatigue about the whole issue of Iran so that you leave it completely and you never talk about it. They've shut down the internet and Wi-Fi, and no one can call, the services are down, and now they're trying to crack down on satellites. So they're attempting to shut down the whole country from talking to each other and talking to the outside world. I'm an Iranian American journalist. I lived in Iran for 12 years. I've lived in Europe, and I've also lived in the US. I want to offer you some of my opinions and perspectives so that through the sea of misinformation, you have the ability to read through the BS, because there's a lot of it, especially with AI, and we're talking about state propaganda using technology. This techno-authoritarianism aspect of it is really scary, and you should listen up. I've seen over the past 2 weeks that this topic of protests in Iran have become very politicized. There's always a right and a left, and it seems to me that the left is not taking Iranian side. I mean, they're dead quiet. Obviously, the Iranian people are oppressed and the regime is the oppressor, but something hasn't clicked in their heads that just because the Islamic Republic attacked Israel doesn't make them the good guy. As a matter of fact, when it comes to the Israel and Palestine issue, I think the Islamic Republic has exploited Palestinians to further their own political and geopolitical interest. And it has a lot to do with the access to the Mediterranean Sea. This topic is completely geopolitical for them. They don't stand for human rights. They don't stand for Palestinians. They don't stand for the people in Yemen. They don't stand for the people in Lebanon. They only stand with the armed militias who are ready to further the Islamic regime's interests in the region. I think they've made the Palestine issue worse, and there's Palestinian blood on their hands, as well as Iranian, as well as Yemeni, as well as Iraqi, as well as Syrian, and as well as Lebanese and Israeli. Many, including me, consider this uprising in Iran that's happening right now as a revolution and not a protest. And every time the media here writes protest in their reports, they're not doing justice to what's actually happening on the ground. This is a revolution, and it's 100% organic, and they're asking for simple things: democracy and human rights. It has every characteristic of a revolution. It started with strikes because of the grievances that the merchants in the bazaars had of the economic situation, and they mainly, just like a lot of people in Iran, blame the economic problems in Iran on the sanctions, but not so much who put the sanctions on them, mostly what was the foreign policy of the Islamic regime to create such a situation where we would get sanctioned. You can tell from the chants in the videos, you can see that there is down with the dictator, down with Khamenei. Clearly anti-government. They're not asking for reforms. They're asking for a full change of the government in its entirety. When the Islamic Republic says death to Israel and death to America in their parliament, the people of Iran say, not in our name. The people of Iran are tired of being ruled by a death cult. This regime has cannibalized the economy and taken from the tables and fridges of Iranians to shove Iranian resources into Hezbollah and Hamas and Houthis' mouth. Why? For the destruction of a sovereign nation like Israel. And Iranians say, not in our name. They don't wake up every morning wishing death to America and Israel. They want a normal life. They don't want a murderous government telling them what to do. All they're saying is keep the resources of Iran for Iran, national interest, religion. Destroying Israel and America, not really on the list. It's really not on the list of what Iranians want. Hear it from an Iranian. I went to school under the Islamic Republic. I was a student, I was living there. And they tried to brainwash everybody. So protests have spread across the country in all of the 31 provinces. Reports are saying that 1/3 of Iranians came out, and that's a huge number. That's almost like 30 million people. From what I've been hearing from people that are inside, they're saying it seems like everyone in Iran is on the streets. Everybody's on strike. Everybody's on strike during the day. They start shooting at anyone. I've heard that they start shooting at anyone that's standing outside. It doesn't matter if you're a child or not. We don't know what the numbers of the casualties are, but I've been hearing numbers from 12,000 to 20,000, and it could even be more than that, because we can't get inside of Iran right now. And what I've been hearing is that I've been watching videos, and I've been hearing people saying it's a massacre, it's a bloodbath. They are going after people with machine guns. They're going after people with military weapons, live rounds, 12 caliber bullets, aimed at the face, aimed at the chest, children, the elderly. Thousands or tens of thousands arrested arbitrarily. And the hangings last year in 2025, they executed close to 2,000 Iranians. Another thing that you may find interesting, you know those proxies that they were funding and arming? Now they're importing those militias to Iran to kill Iranian protesters, because Iranians just, there aren't enough Iranians that will kill Iranians. Their crackdown forces are overwhelmed. So they're using Iraqi Hashd-e-Shabi militias entering from the western border of Iran. They're using ambulances to disguise crackdown forces with machine guns and military weapon guns to mow people down. And then their propaganda state TV takes that and says they just call protesters terrorists. They said terrorists influenced by Israel and the US destroyed ambulances. The same ambulances that they were using to carry crackdown forces.
به آمبولانس ها حمله کردند. در همون 3 روز 180 آمبولانس آتش زده شده.
So who are among these protesters that are trying to overthrow the regime? When I say protest, I don't want to minimize the revolution. It is a revolution. People want full change. This is not about reform. I want to make that clear. I've seen people on wheelchairs and families with their children hand in hand walking. At some point during the past 2 weeks, it became a political thing. It was so beautiful. Everybody in the country started to come outside, and they just started to hike. And the government mowed them down like this. I'm hearing of families nearly getting wiped out because so many of their members are killed. They mow people down. Their vans then pick the dead off of the streets. They dump them in morgues, unmarked graves. They go to hospitals and they shoot dead any protester that is injured. so that they don't go back out and protest. Morgues are overflowing. Bodies are piled up in body bags. I've been hearing stories that when families, when they try to find the bodies of their loved ones, of their children, of their sisters, of their mothers, fathers, grandfathers, that when they go to the morgues or the cemetery, I've heard of stories where the IRGC forces are standing outside asking a grieving mother looking for her child's body that she should go get them lunch first before they allow the mother to even try looking for the kid. And I've heard stories that even once they were let in, sometimes having to pay a car's worth of money to the IRGC. Why? Because they say if we shot your relative or friend, it cost us money, so you need to repay us before you retrieve their corpse. This is the kind of regime we're talking about. And the worst part about it is that if you're trying to, I've also heard that after going through that kind of humiliation and having to give the IRGC forces that just killed your loved one something, a gift, before they give you your loved one's body, they have to go through all of the body bags to identify their loved one. And sometimes they may look at 400 faces and still not find their loved one. The grievances that Iranians have with this regime are not isolated to one group of people. This is a revolution. Iranians inside and outside of the country are united. Minorities, men, women, dissidents, merchants, business owners, the young, the old, students, workers, journalists, writers, artists, directors, Muslims. They don't treat Muslims well. How many times have we seen a Muhammad in the list of the killed, or a grieving mother with a hijab? This is clearly not about Islam. This is about a murderous regime. This regime doesn't serve anyone but the clergy and the corrupt IRGC members who have actually benefited from the sanctions. Because when the sanctions happen, then they sell the oil at a discount, by the way. They sell the oil to China or whoever will buy it, but mostly China, and spend that money on proxies. Not the country, nuclear, missile, drone, proxies. None of it goes to these social groups that I just listed. And they all know that. So they all have shared grievances, but they also have their own grievances, like women, students, journalists, directors. They all have their own thing. It's either women's rights or minority rights, religious minority, ethnic minorities, all of it. Everybody has a grievance. And that's why I say it's a revolution. This isn't the first time that Iranians are asking for regime change. All Iranians want is normal relations with the world, normal diplomatic relations. And by normal, I don't mean sucking up to the world. I mean having neutral policies, having a neutral foreign policy that keeps in mind the national interest of Iran without being belligerent towards other countries and people. And what Iranians want is for the resources of Iran to be spent on them, not on Islamist proxies. This will benefit the world. I mean, the world will be a better place without the Islamic Republic. The world will be a safer place without the Islamic Republic. They are the sponsor of terror. I remember when in 2009, me and my family had to leave Iran because my parents committed the crime of being journalists. We went to the Czech Republic, and one of the days in school, one of the kids asked me if I'm a terrorist. And that was the first time that I understood that not everybody looks at the Persian culture as Persians look at the culture, as this romantic culture of hospitality and kindness and Persian rugs and art and poetry and all the beauties that Iran and Iranians have to offer. I realized that the world could not see it. I realized that the Islamic Republic has sold the wrong idea of Iran. So Iranians don't think that this regime represents them. It's lost complete legitimacy in the eyes of Iranians, and it's only ruling by force. I remember in 2009, people were chanting, "Where's my vote?" But after 2009, when people realized that all of the routes to change within the same government were complete dead ends, more and more groups in Iran realized that there is no reforming this government and you have to go to the extreme of changing the regime. But this didn't happen overnight. What the world needs to understand is that there is a sea of blood between the people of Iran and the Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic has massacred Iranians, and whether it was in the streets or in through sham trials and executions. If the Islamic Republic did what they did to their own people, to another country's people, the world would be outraged and they would call it a war crime. But when it's happening in Iran, that's not happening. Another reason they've lost legitimacy in the eyes of the people is their corruption. Okay, so we established that the Islamic Republic has no legitimacy in their own people's eyes. So what does that mean? They're ruling by force, meaning they are actually occupying Iran. It doesn't have to be a foreign force to be called an occupier. They're occupying because the people want them gone, and they're using military weapons and foreign militias to stay. So, in my opinion, they are occupying Iran. Another sign is that since their inception in 1979, they've tried to weaken the national army and strengthen the IRGC. And it stands for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Do you see Iran in that name? It's not there. Why is it not there? Because it's not there to protect Iranians and Iran. And the issue is that they've weakened the army. And so right now, the army has either been so infiltrated or weakened that they can't really do anything to protect Iranians. So the Basijis and the IRGC is massacring the people. Iran is not a republic. The election's not real. The president has no power. He's a toy for the Ayatollah at the top. And even the Islamic Republic diplomats are not real diplomats because they've been used to assassinate dissidents in gruesome manner. That is the Quds force of the IRGC that works abroad. What are Iranians tired of? They're tired of IRGC's ideological aggression towards Iranians, and they want a national army that has the national interest at heart. They want a neutral foreign policy that isn't belligerent and isn't going after the annihilation of sovereign nations like the USA or Israel. They want the foreign policy to be based on building friendships and partnerships with other countries instead of the adventurous terror sponsoring policies that the IRGC and the Islamic Revolution is pushing right now. If you're in Europe, if you're in Ukraine, you should care about this. This is the same government that's giving drones, missiles, and military equipment to Russia to use against Ukrainians in the war that it's waged on Ukraine. If you want a world with less terrorism, you should care about this issue. People of Iran don't want their resources to be funneled into the mouths of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis and all of the Islamic militias in the region. They're tired of clergy institutions getting funded large amounts of resources when many Iranians can't afford food. They want political Islam gone from Iran, meaning freedom of religion. Iranians are tired of being told what to wear. Iranians don't care about exporting the revolution. They have nothing to do with it. Iranians are victims of political Islam themselves, and they're not really interested in exporting anything other than saffron and rugs and hopefully some industrial things in the next government. Iranians want democracy. They want human rights. They want freedom of speech. They want secularism. They want territorial integrity without a belligerent foreign policy. They want their national identity back. This regime has chipped away at the Iranian pride, the culture, or traditions. They've always been against it. They've tried to push the Islamic ideology on a culture that's more than 2,500 years old, that created the first human rights cylinder, that created the first empire where freedom of religion was tolerated. They want minority rights, and Iran is beautiful like that. It's got so many religions and ethnicities within it, so that is just so important to have that equality. They want women's rights. The men do too. The 2022 movement was a feminist revolution. And it may have been the first feminist revolution because the suffragettes were not supported by men. Men were getting shot in the streets in Iran. They joined the feminist movement, the woman life freedom movement. And when it comes to the government and the form of government, what I know is that all Iranians want a democracy with a strong parliament that represents the people. Some support a republic and some support constitutional monarchy. Both are democratic, and there's precedents in Europe of both forms of government being successful. And a vote and a referendum is going to decide that. In Iran, I'm not going to decide that. What can you do to help? What you can do is to always, for yourself and other people, if you catch it, differentiate between Iran's government, and Iranians, because they could not be further from each other. The government in Iran does not represent Iranians. It's an occupying force massacring people to stay by force. And we need your help to be our voice. Because when they shut the internet down, that's when the world needs to speak out. Call your officials to help provide internet access for Iranians right now because they're in complete blackout. Information can't get out, and the government wants that. They don't want you to see what's happening in Iran. And once they stop Iranians, they will export the revolution. This is not an isolated issue. The world that we live in right now, it's all linked together. If you care about freedom of information, the right to have Wi-Fi, imagine if your country shut down your Wi-Fi. You'd be pretty pissed. I'd be pretty pissed. So please be their voice.
هزاران هزار نفر آدم کشته شدن، دوستا، رفیقا، تمام عزیزان ما کشته شدن تو ایران. فقط صدای ما باشی، بهتر صدای ما دنیا بشنوه. اگر تو چند روز آینده اتفاقی نیفته همه ایران قتل عام میشن.
In my opinion, the diplomatic pressure that the Islamic Republic needs to feel right now after this massacre that's happened, there's nothing more appropriate than every country calling all of your representatives and urging them to kick out the Islamic Republic diplomats in your countries, in the embassies that they are. They are not a legitimate state. They should not be treated as such. To not escalate matters between the US and Iran, maybe that the US military can create a blockade on the western border of Iran and prevent Hashd-e-Shabi Islamist militias to be transported into Iran to crack down on Iranians. That's a less provocative method of helping, but not escalating things. And I'm not trying to say that things are not escalated. The numbers of the casualties in Iran are horrific. So if anybody tells you that they have the right answers right now to fix this, they're lying to you. It seems like the Islamic Republic is ready to take Iran down with it and rule over ashes. That's the kind of leaders they are. And I hope that Iran is free and this massacre stops and the young, educated, beautiful people of Iran heal from this nightmare that we've all gone through for 47 years.